In the beautiful rivers of southern Chile, Dr. Mary Neal and her husband loved kayaking through the turbulent rapids. One day, they decided to paddle a river famous for waterfalls and steep slopes. The waterfall was 10 to 15 feet high, exciting and challenging, but still within their technical abilities. This happened in 1999, on the last day of their river adventure. Neil's husband had sudden back pain, so he didn't join. Neil joined some expert kayakers from the United States on the same route. Approaching the first steep slope, the lead raft suddenly went out of control, blocking the route they picked. Neil's only choice was to turn and go over the main part of the waterfall. At the top of waterfall, she saw turbulent waters at the bottom. Although she knew it was risky, she thought it would be like hitting the bottom, flipping over, and then getting out of the boat to float downstream awkwardly. Not pleasant, but it happens sometimes. However, what came next was way beyond what she expected. As the boat drifted towards the river's bottom, it got stuck underwater in a rocky crevice. The boat, along with Neil, was immediately swallowed by 8 to 10 feet of deep water and couldn't float back up. At this critical moment, Neil stayed remarkably calm. She tried to break free from the water's grip, struggling to release the boat, but the weight of the water and the force of the current left her helpless. She realized that she was facing death, and her options were very limited. Before this incident, Neil had a mostly smooth life. She was smart, capable, and an outstanding surgeon, with a happy family including a husband and 4 kids. Throughout her life, she hadn't experienced the pain of losing loved ones, no grandparents, parents, siblings, or friends. The closest she came to death was dealing with some death cases during her medical practice and surgical training, but those patients had no personal connection to her life. Consequently, she had never seriously thought about death. If you asked her about death, she'd likely say, "Well, I'll think about it someday, but not today." Despite being born into a Christian family, Neil was more of a cultural Christian. She attended church, followed some church rules, and tried to be a good person. But deep down, she didn't have a strong and genuine faith in God. So, even in a life or death moment, Neil didn't have the confidence to shout, "God, save me." But she didn't choose to call or turn away from God either. Instead, she calmly chose to submit. She thought,
God, your will be done on earth in my life period, not on my timetable, not the way I want it.
Suddenly, something miraculous happened.
Yes, my spirit, my essence, myself, the true me, whatever you want to call it, did leave my body and rise up and out of the water. And I have to tell you, I never had the experience of being alive and then dead or conscious and then unconscious. I had this experience of being alive and then more alive, conscious and then more conscious. All of my senses were intensified 1,000-fold. And it was different in terms of time and dimension so that I could experience all of eternity in each moment. I could experience, it's like experiencing 1,000 realities all at the same time, yet independently. And I know that doesn't make sense, but there's sort of no way really to describe it. And I was greeted by a group of, people, spirits, beings, people who had known me and loved me as long as I have existed. And people always ask, did I recognize them? And I did not, because again, at that point in my life, I had not personally known anyone who died. But I knew that these were people who had been important in my life story. Perhaps a grandparent or great-grandparent who died before I was born. And I knew they were so overjoyed, absolutely overjoyed to welcome me home. And yes, they took me along this incredibly beautiful path that to me was just exploding with color and flowers and the aromas of flowers, which is what speaks beauty to my soul. I'm convinced that God presents to each of us when we die the experience that will make us feel completely known, completely loved, and will speak beauty into our souls. And so they took me down this incredible path and toward this sort of great dome structure of sorts. And when we got to the end, I was there for what felt like many, many hours and had this incredible understanding of really the divine order of the universe, how it all works, how there can be billions of us on the planet, but we are each individually known and loved as though we're the only ones. And then how it works, in terms of interconnectedness. I mean, we are all part of one, whether it's humans, animals, the natural world. We are God's creations, and we are entirely and perfectly intertwined and interconnected.
However, as Neil enjoyed the happiness in heaven, God told her she had more work to do on earth. So she had to go back to her body. When she objected, God gave her a laundry list. In that list, one item was about her 9-year-old son would suffer an unexpected death. How could that happen? He seemed very healthy at that time. However, about 10 years later, that son did pass away in a car accident. Neil wrote about her experience in a book called To Heaven and Back. Speaking about this, she said with deep emotion,
And I will fully acknowledge that my trust in God's promises did not protect me from loss, and it did not protect me from the emotional devastation of losing my son. He and I were very close. I loved him dearly. I would give anything to have him back. Like any parent, I'd give my own life for sure to have him back. But I will tell you that because of my trust in God's promises, even on my most sorrowful day, I simultaneously was able to experience incredible gratitude and joy. Because I think joy is found in the moment, and I think joy is experienced each